Two evil forces, both alike in dignity, in fair Avernus where we lay our scene. From ancient blood war break to new mutiny, where demonic blood makes infernal hands unclean. Listen up, Burke. We're looking to send a love letter today. Okay, today we're going to talk about something a little bit different, a little bit more interesting. We're going to talk about a module that is in this Well of Worlds. This is a Planescape anthology of modules for second edition AD&D, and it was meant to introduce players to the Planescape setting. So it's full of introductory adventures of varying levels, so you can bring characters into that kind of like meta setting, you know, this kind of connecting setting between different settings, regardless of what level your campaign was at. The module we're going to look at is Love Letter. It's not clear who wrote it because there's not a list of the authors for each of the adventures, but it's illustrated by Tony Dieterlitz, obviously. So there's that kind of like Arthur Rackham grind punk aesthetic to all the illustrations, and it is 11 pages long, so it's actually really, really, really short. You can read it in maybe half an hour. It's a really fun module that I've got a lot of mileage out of. And I'm just going to go through my bona fides first because my interactions with this module are a little bit different from everything else. I first read this a long time ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and I didn't think much of it. And then I forgot about it, put it away, never did anything with it. I thought it was emblematic of 2E's trad design that I wasn't that interested in at the time. And then I signed up to play a game at UK Games Expo in 2023 that was run by the host of the Grognard Files podcast, Dirk the Dice. If you've never listened to that podcast, you should, because what Dirk and his co-host Blythe do is wonderfully important and interesting for role-playing games, especially as an English, like British role player, and especially as a Northern English role player. I think that what they do is really, really, really interesting and wonderful, and you should check them out. So I played that game, and it was an old school. I was running through Old School Essentials, and I thought this is actually brilliant. I didn't realize until it was right near the end of the module, like, oh, hold on, I've actually read this before. And the way he presented it was actually, this is really engaging and really interesting. So I played in that game, and then I thought it was brilliant, really, really wonderful. I said it at the time. And then I went back to my copy of it and had a good read of it, and I've since run it. I have run it 3 times for different groups of differing levels, all for my own old school adjacent system, journeyman, expert, master. And every single time it has gone down a scream. It is incredibly fun, despite the fact that it is a sort of linear travel module. So what is the through line to Love Letter? So it's part of this, part of Well of Worlds. It's the second or third adventure in here. And what has happened is that a succubus and a beatazu, so a demon and a devil, have fallen in love, and they have decided to try and maintain this relationship. There's overtones of Romeo and Juliet in this module, which I think is absolutely wonderful. But they can't actually spend any time together because obviously they are on either sides of the blood war. Now, the module, because it's written in second edition, it doesn't refer to them as demons and devils. It doesn't talk about hell really at all. It uses terms like Tanari and Beatazu and Beator and Avernus. But we all know what's going on. Anyone who read this or run this knows exactly what's going on. And what happens at the beginning is the succubus is living in a tower in Avernus. She's kind of a prisoner. Or at least she's having to behave in a way that doesn't draw attention to her relationship with this Beatazu. And the Beatazu approaches the player characters wherever they are and says, in disguise, I've fallen in love with someone that I shouldn't be in love with. We exchange letters. Could you please send this letter to my beloved? And obviously the players agree because that's the hook. That's the only hook that's provided, but it's a good one. And then as soon as they do that, they're given a crystal that allows them to transport them to Avernus. And once there, they travel across a hellscape, encountering various kind of like fiendish enemies. Eventually arrive at this black tower, which is this kind of infernal citadel. They enter, and then they meet her. And what happens then is kind of up to the players. It can go either way. But every time I've played it, it's always played it or run it. It's always ended as a kind of escape with her. So it's really, really, really good fun. It's a really simple adventure, but I recommend you have a look at this, especially if you're interested in Planescape. I'm going to be perfectly honest, though, and say that I have never run this module set in Planescape setting. I don't think that while it conveys things to do with planar travel, going to hell, I don't actually think that that is necessarily something that is inherent to Planescape, you know, going to hell and having to do this. And in every time I've run it, it's just been a traveling sort of interesting NPC has entered the tavern and said to my player characters, "Oh, I need you to send a letter to my beloved," and then they've agreed, and then he's been like, "Right, here's the transport," and they flash and end up in Avernus. So, when they arrive in Avernus, it's obvious where they need to go. They're on a barren hillside, and I always describe like the sky as kind of so dark it's not obvious if they're in a large cavern or not. I always call for very easy skill tests, either knowledge arcana, knowledge dungeoneering, knowledge religion, just straight intelligence for them to work out that they are in the abyss. They're in the first level of the abyss, and once they've done that, it becomes quite clear that to them that this mystery that they're starting to unpick is, or actually they usually get it by that point almost immediately that, we are delivering this letter for some people who shouldn't be in love with each other, and there's something hellish and kind of quite evil going on here. They travel across this hellscape. There's only really 3 routes that they can take. They can either go through some hills, which are wonderful because there is these craters in these hills that are actually kind of like wells deeper into the abyss. And I remember when I played this, my character, she had to roll a kind of like save versus charm, or kind of like go up and have a look in, and there was a pair of eyes looking at her from deeper in the abyss. And I just love the idea of, you're staring into the abyss and the abyss stares back. They can cross a lake, which has got this kind of like whirlpool in it. Or the third way is they can walk along a road through this kind of like blood forest. And it's always up to the player characters which way they go. It's really, really, really exciting. It gives them enough sense of agency. It doesn't feel contrived or difficult, but it is just a kind of like a kind of linear set of events once they've chosen which way they're going to go, a linear set of encounters, and it just depends how they interact with them. Now, every single time my players have done it, they have. I actually have removed the opportunity to go across the lake because I think that cuts out quite a lot of the travel, and I don't think that's particularly compelling. So what happens is they come down off this hillside, they see an elephant skull that's nailed to a post, and this is in the module. They see an elephant skull that's nailed to the post, and it's obviously this elephant skull, which can speak, is struggling for its jaw, and there's bones everywhere. They're in a bone field. I just love the idea of like, it's kind of like really almost grotesque, this carnivalesque, this like elephant's graveyard, and it's with this skull. They find the skull usually, they find the jaw piece usually, and then they can talk to it. And this elephant skull is usually really friendly, but also kind of useless, and can give them some advice about which way to go. But the advice is contradictory, and really, what usually happens is they just realize that they're just going to have to pick a direction based on what they feel more comfortable doing as a group. Now, one thing that whenever my players have threatened this skull, which sometimes they do, I always have infernal chickens turn up, which are not in the module, but I think that's a good way of conveying the closeness and proximity of hell. And especially the necrophagous quality to walking through a boneyard in hell. These kind of strange flesh chickens come and attack them. I always describe them as having human lips and kind of like slithering towards them. Really, really, really wonderful stuff. As I said, every time my players have done it, they've gone through the hills, the same as I did when I played this module. And what's really good fun about that is they get attacked by eye wings. You can have rivers of acid that they have to cross. It's really, really, really good fun. And it's a very good example of old school design that is very instanced and not about just kind of like going into a location like a dungeon and just clearing it out and doing that over multiple depths. In many ways, it's an old school narrative structure, which is going from A to B via all these kind of strange and interesting encounters. It reminds me of things like Ultraviolet Grasslands. It reminds me of things like the first Dragonlance module, which is just really a travel story. It's really, really, really good fun. So they make it to the Black Tower. And like I said, she's kind of a prisoner, kind of not. There's legion demons there that are guarding her. She's nominally in charge, but actually, if her interactions with this Beatazu come into fruition, they become clear to everyone, the game's up and she is in trouble. I think it is the best thing to do is to have her get discovered pretty much every time you run it, because it's just hilarious. And what happens is there's a gatekeeper, which is like a fly demon that comes out. I always allow the players to kind of negotiate with it. Sometimes when I've played it, when I've run it, characters have attacked this gatekeeper. Sometimes they've negotiated with it. But whatever happens, this gatekeeper's presence is going to alert the other demons to the fact that there are mortals entering the Black Tower. So either other demons are going to find its body if it's been killed, or it's going to go and report and say what's going on. So they enter the Black Tower, and it's this kind of like horrible black ziggurat of spikes and gibbets and kind of screaming. I always run it as Now, in the module, it describes each of the rooms in quite a lot of detail, as would be the tradition in second edition. And I don't really do it like that. I always conceptualize it in my head as kind of like one of the sigil towers from the Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion, where it's just kind of like a tower tube with a series of chambers going up. And I do it as an extended test, and it gives you the opportunity, therefore, to lay a bit of groundwork in terms of aesthetics. I talk about how, like the doorways are kind of like gristling teeth or kind of like yawning sphincters, like it's really bodily and disgusting. And when they make it to the top of that, usually by that time they have a hint that their presence in the tower has been betrayed and there's a group of demons. I always think it's a fantastic idea to use a Balor. That's what Dirk the Dive did when he ran it for us. A Balor turned up, this Balrog at the bottom. They can look over the balcony, like into the center of the tower, and see this huge kind of like flaming demon aware of their presence. You get to the top, and they're normally there to deliver this. They're nominally there to deliver this message. And what always happens, I think is more fun, is they ask her to this, or she asks them to break her out, and they can get out together. And it begins this fantastic chase scene every single time, where the characters are trying to get out of, they break the bars off the windows, they try and kind of like get out. She can fly back to this forgotten hillside where they first entered Avernus, which is the like a ring of stones where they can activate their device to escape again. And it's just a fantastic chase. Sometimes I've had it where players have like rappelled down the side of the tower. I had one time where it was a high level party, and they had a druid who can transform into an eagle, and she with her succubus wings carried one of the characters, and another character carried several of the other characters in eagle form. Just really, really, really good fun stuff. While I-Wings chased them down. That was the most recent time I ran it, which was about a week ago before recording this. Really, really fun cinematic endings. As I've said before, I think that yam-shaped adventures are the best, where you have a focused start and a kind of broadening out in the middle, and then a really focused ending. And I think that's exactly what Love Letter does. It gives you a really poignant, interesting beginning. There's this element of reveal. They get a bit of choice on where they go, and then it comes to a really focused end. It should only really take you one session to run this. I was thinking about, before recording this, what I'd like to say about why one session, because you could do this over 3 or 4. The reason I'd say one is because for the most part, they're just going to be traveling. And I think that when you're sat at the table and you're running a series of travel encounters, what happens is you reach a zenith of momentum, at which point they have to reach their destination. Because if you don't, what happens is you start again next time, you've got to build that momentum up again. And it can feel a little bit like exactly that we're just going from encounter to encounter, and no progress is really being made. It's just that we've got to go through a series of events before we get there. And you don't want it to feel like that. You want to feel like we want them to feel like they're making progress and they're going to reach there. I'll say again, I am deeply thankful for Dirk the Dice for kind of introducing me to this module, for making me run it. Because like I said, on reflection, when I first read it, I didn't think much of it. I think it's a really good, fun module. I think it expresses some of the best things about Planescape, but it doesn't necessarily need to be set in Planescape. You can pick this up on drive-through, this collection, for not very much. And as ever, I appreciate you taking the time to listen to this. Please do all that good stuff, like and subscribe, and all that kind of stuff. I'll put a link to this in the kind of the scroll box at the bottom. But otherwise, thank you again, and I will speak with you again soon. Thank you.